Hello, can you all hear me online?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Tommy, are we good?
Yes. Yeah, we're live.
All right. Let me start. Let me get my agenda out. Okay, everyone. I now call this meeting to order on March 10th, Tuesday at 7:04 p.m. Can we please, or can you please raise your hand if you would like to make any amendments to today's agenda? I see Hiram and then Chris.
Motion to add a resolution calling on the University of California Regents to divest from companies complicit in human rights violations and militarization in the Philippines to the agenda.
Is there a second?
I
I
second.
second.
Hiram motions, Kaya seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. All against. All abstaining. With a vote of 12 to 0 to 0, that is added onto tonight's agenda. Chris? I can go to Edison.
Yeah, go to Edison.
Hello. Could we strike SFS allocations and CS transport allocations from the agenda? Thank you.
Yes. Chris?
May we please remove academic success referendum allocations and travel grant mini fund allocations as well. Thank you.
Joy?
Can we please add the letter regarding Westwood Boulevard Safety and Mobility Project to today's agenda, please?
Is that an action item? Sorry, we're voting on
Yes.
that, right? It's
Yes,
a
we're
letter?
voting.
Okay, yeah. Can you motion, please?
Motion to add the letter regarding Westwood Boulevard Safety and Mobility Project to today's agenda.
Second.
Joy motions, Edison seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. All against. All abstaining. With a vote of 8 to 0 to 0, that is added onto tonight's agenda. Is there anything else, Joy?
Yes, can we please strike TJF allocations?
Yes. All right. Is that it for you, Joy?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Divine?
Hi, can we strike ARC allocations?
Yes. Um, Russell?
Can we please strike contingency allocations?
Got it. Anybody else? Oh, actually, um, Tommy, I think you might have to motion for a presentation. But before that, can I please motion to, what's the language again for Jonathan for discretionary? Okay. Can I motion, please, to add an action item for discretionary for $250, please? And I will explain later.
Second.
Who was that?
Seconded.
Oh, okay. I motion, Daniel seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. All against. All abstaining with a vote of 8 to 0 to 0. That is added on to the funding requests. Tommy, do you have any?
Yeah, I motion to add a presentation. What's the topic of the presentation?
I think student conduct charges. Actually, I realize you don't have to motion for that. You can just add it on.
All right, then I will add a presentation on student conduct.
Thank you. Divine?
Hi, can we add changes to the ARC guidelines, please? Tommy, I'm about to email it to you like right now.
Thank you. I think we have the motion for those.
I motion to add changes to the ARC guidelines to the USAC agenda.
Second.
Tommy motions, Edison seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. All against, all abstaining. With a vote of 11 to 0, those ARC guideline changes are added onto tonight's agenda. Anybody else? If not, can we please get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Wait for a second till Divine sends over the things because we have to approve the accurate agenda.
I sent it.
All right, let me refresh my inbox. All right, we're good to go.
Can someone please motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I motion to approve the agenda for March 10th, 2026.
Yep.
I second.
Tommy motion, Daniel seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. All against, all abstaining. With a vote of 12 to 0, tonight's agenda for March 10th is approved. We will now be moving on to the approval of the meeting minutes. This is from last week's meeting minutes and our meeting regarding referendums. So if you had the opportunity to review those two, if there are any objections to either that most recent one or the one 2 weeks ago, please, I guess, just raise your hand. If there aren't, then we will approve the meeting minutes from last week's USAC meeting and 2 weeks ago. Now we will move on to public comments. If you are here for in-person public comment, can you please raise your hands? Okay, in the gray jacket, when you see the 2-minute timer, you may begin. You can come up to the mic. And if Tommy, if we can please get the timer. You may begin.
Hi, my name is Alice. I am here on behalf of Puso SLA, a Filipino-U.S. solidarity organization, and as a concerned undergraduate of UCLA. Last spring, we united with USAC on passing a resolution in solidarity with the Filipino workers in the Philippines facing red tagging and resisting U.S.-backed Filipino government and their active violence and exploitation of the very workers that their government depends on. And just last month, we again united on a letter statement towards West LA District Representative Tai Liu, along with a statement letter, 60 plus handwritten letters by community members, students, and organizations was delivered to our meeting with his office on February 17th, expressing concern for the red tagging of cultural student organizations and human rights violations in U.S.-backed bombing of Mindoro and January 1st, using our taxpayer money. And while we continue demand action and accountability from Tai Liu, today we demand accountability and transparency from the regents, supported by student organizations such as Anak SLAP, SJP, YDSA on campus as co-sponsors to call upon USAC to support our efforts in demanding UC regents to divest from companies that utilize worker retirement funds and the general endowment pool that is a total of 18.8 billion in assets, investing in companies manufacturing weapons that aids in the U.S. in violations of international humanitarian laws, as well as the repression of not only students but all activist voices, the defending of resources, and the vote in the most vulnerable sector, all while the regions profit off the labor and tuition of undergraduate, graduate student, grad students, instructors, TAs, lecturers, researchers, and social workers who are essentially in sustaining the operations of the UC. Let our awareness and resistance against the atrocities that the regions are complicit in be a wake-up call for those in power to realize that they are powerless without the support of the people, that we hold them accountable and be transparent in their financial practices that shall benefit those who sustain the operation of the UCs.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diana Raya Perez, and I am here on behalf of the Transfer Student Representative Office to give a public comment on the resolution calling on the University of California Regents to divest from companies complicit in human rights violations and militarization in the Philippines. To read how 18.8 billion in assets are tied to companies connected to warfare, weapon production, and violations to international humanitarian laws is so unfortunate. And I too reject the use of my tuition, my work study funds to finance industry tied to human rights violations and violence against marginalized communities. As a woman of color from Mexico, I have seen how these funds, weapons are doing to communities and how it's harming underrepresented communities who have nothing to do with this. It makes me sick how my tuition and other funds are funding violence in other countries and harming underrepresented communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. I think Leila.
Hi guys, I'm Layla from CalPERG. A couple of updates for this week. First, we have our press conference on affordable textbooks this Friday at 2 p.m. So look out for that. But moving forward, our next big priority for the rest of the spring term is just going to be winning our Protect Our Oceans campaign. We've actually been working on this campaign for over 3 years now, trying to win more protections for marine life. And one way or another, that campaign is going to be completely decided at the end of this spring. So we'll be devoting the majority of our time and energy throughout this upcoming quarter to recruiting and showing big support for the campaign. We want to recruit 300 people to come to hearings statewide in April and May across the state, including 50 just from UCLA going to Santa Barbara. And we'd love to have you guys be a part of that by either coming to public comment yourselves, writing letters of support, or passing a resolution showing your support for the campaign as representatives of UCLA's student body. So really hoping to work with you guys more this spring. But yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other students here for public comment? Tommy, are there any online?
Yeah, we have quite a few, so or people here. I don't know if they're here for public comment, but I think we have one right now, so let me promote them.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Luke, whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Luke. I'm here on behalf of Puso West LA, as well, Filipino-US Solidarity Organization based in West LA. And I'm also a concerned undergraduate of UCLA. And I want to echo the previous public comments of the first two given on the resolution to fully divest as UC system from war companies, weapon manufacturers, and intelligence groups who profit from repression and human rights violations of the people of the Philippines by the Philippines government, backed by the US. And to reiterate that we are here with support from orgs such as Anak Bayan UCLA, the Student Labor Advocacy Project at UCLA, and Young Democratic Socialists of America at UCLA, and the UC Regents and UCLA admin. Their responsibility should be to support students and workers, at minimum meeting their basic needs of survival and well-being, which it is clear that they have the funds for based on their profit levels at workplaces and the research that we have done. And instead, they have done exactly the opposite. And for us, we have an opportunity today to make the steps that we are capable of towards calling for divestment and for clear signs of and gestures of solidarity with the workers, the peasants, in the masses of the Philippines, and at home for investment in the basic needs of students and workers who keep the school running. Thank you.
Thank you. Tommy, can you possibly assign the next speaker?
If you are here for public comment, please raise your hand. All right, I think that's it.
All right. With that, I close public comment at 7:19 p.m. today. Sorry. Next, we will move on to our BOD funding.
Hey everyone. Sorry, you caught me off guard. Okay, this week the USA/BOD fund has a request allocation of $179.03, and we recommend a total allocation of $179.03 to one non-USAC entity, and I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
Are there any questions or comments? If not, can we please get a motion?
Of course. I motion to approve the USA/BOD allocation of $179.03 to one non-USAC entity.
I second that
Second.
motion.
Nico motions. Chris seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. All against? All abstaining with a vote of 11 to 0 to 0 that USA BOD funding is approved. Next, we have SWC programming fund allocations with Hannah.
This week, SWC recommends an allocation of $750 to one non-USAC entity.
Are there any questions or comments regarding that funding? If not, the SWC programming fund allocations are approved. Next, we have Bruin Advocacy Grant allocations.
Bruin Advocacy Grant recommends an allocation of $0 for 0 USAC orgs and $6,737 for 17 non-USAC orgs.
Are there any questions or comments? If not, the Bruin Advocacy Grant allocations are approved for this week. Next, we will have our discretionary. I'm motioning to request this discretionary for $250. Tommy, I think you need to add it on to the agenda. But this $250 would be used to purchase a vacuum, and the vacuum would be available to all 15 USAC offices, and it would be managed by Student Government Support Services. So Jonathan and Lorelei. The reason I'm saying this is because the process is too long to just get one from, I don't know, housing, residential life. It's $250. I think it's doable, and SGS has happily agreed to manage the vacuum in their office space. So if there are any questions or comments, I'm more than happy to answer them. Chris?
Wait, the vacuum model that we'd be using, if I heard correctly, is the one from Residential Life? Because
No.
yeah, that's
No, not residential life. Housing, I don't know.
Okay,
There is no official vacuum that we have access to.
I'm gonna buy one online that is much better than the rest
Okay,
of the vacuum.
yes,
Yeah.
thank whoever you believe in, because
This-
that was
yeah.
just my question.
And
Those don't work. Yeah, it is off. Well,
And I'm sure Jonathan, I don't know, we'll have a system, but I think we just need to have one in general that will be managed by SGS. Alrighty. I motion to allocate $250 from our discretionary funding for the purchase of a USAC-wide vacuum.
I second.
All in favor, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. All against. All abstaining. With a vote of 12 to 0 to 0, the 250 request from discretionary is approved. Next, we will be moving on to our special presentation regarding student conduct charges. I think, Tommy, can you please promote Dylan and give him access?
Okay. Hello. I'm gonna share my screen. I have a presentation. Hopefully you can see it. I'm also gonna drop the presentation link in the chat if anyone wants to follow along. Not or if you want to follow along, not on the Zoom. But first, I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Dylan. I'm a fifth year PhD student in computer science. I'm here on behalf of Students for Justice in Palestine and Graduate Students for Justice in Palestine. Last year, we presented to USAC on the systematic militarization of police repression at UCLA, which has unfortunately gotten worse. And today, I just wanted to give a follow-up on something that's directly relevant to your duties as an elected student body, and that's on the student conduct process. So hopefully we'll make this quick, but I just want to start by going over that the student conduct process is an actual necessary educational system, and it should work to emphasize the university's core values and the core values of us as a student. However, from our experience going through the student conduct process, UCLA's current process is deeply flawed, acting as more of a kangaroo court to punish dissent, limit publicity, and satisfy many administrator demands. So just have a bit of top line overviews of some of the numbers that we've collected throughout the student conduct process, and I'm going to go more deep into many of the problems that we're facing with student conduct to give you a bit of an understanding of how it currently works and how undergoing flawed it is. To do this, we've collected the experiences and quotes from various students who have been undergoing and have undergone the student conduct process. The unfortunate reality is that these experiences are not unique, nor are these experiences representative of everyone's experience. The student conduct process, as it currently stands, is really brutal. To Because of time, I'm not going to read every single quote that we have on the slides. Although you can look through the slides at your own leisure if you want to get a better understanding of the student conduct process. So firstly, just to begin by talking about the student conduct process generally, is to emphasize, I think, a common misconception is that the student conduct process is not purely academic experiences. At UCLA, the administration has been really heavy-handed in releasing student conduct decisions and engaging in student conduct charges related to public advocacy and freedom of expression. And almost exclusively, every single student or conduct charge that we've seen, and we've been looking online a lot, is targeted at those in support of Palestinian liberation, and those demonstrating in support of Palestinian liberation. Um, there's been there's been a lack of care by the Office of Student Conduct in understanding these student experiences. I'm going to read one of the quotes here, but quote, I have been devastated by the ramifications of this disciplinary ordeal. Every step of the student conduct process triggers painful and vivid flashbacks of the violence inflicted upon me during my assault by UCPD. On top of this, my stress, anxiety, heartbreak are compounded daily by the constant exposure to traumatic injury and news reports detailing the ongoing violence faced by my people and loved ones in Palestine. Daily, I wake up to the harrowing consciousness that my ancestral homeland is subjected to relentless devastation, that innocent children suffer grotesque injuries, and families continue to be systematically destroyed. Each step of this prolonged ordeal has reinforced the deliberating reality that institutional injustice and global humanitarian crises are not isolated phenomena, but deeply intertwined with my lived experience. From our experience, the student conduct process has lacked core requirements of due process enshrined in both the California and US Constitution. For most students that we've helped and undergone the student conduct process with, the only evidence against them was a vaguely worded police report of the action of nameless individuals and the fact that they were arrested on a certain day. Um, Despite the university's insistence, the fact of being arrested is not actual evidence of conduct, And if it was an actual courtroom, it could not be used as evidence of wrongdoing. I think something also to point out is that the student arrest records that UCLA has been relying upon have mostly at this point been sealed with a court order due to lack of charges filed, making their use in student conduct procedures illegal. And that's been recently demonstrated by a court decision at Columbia University, where they had a nearly identical use of police reports and sealed records to charge students. Many students get quote unquote invisible evidence treatment. They're unable to see or access recordings that are used against them. We have documented several instances where the Student Conduct Office have deliberately withheld exculpatory evidence and refused to release videos in their direct possession. Um, I'll just want to note the level of absurdity that the process has gotten on is that UCLA hired the ex-OJ Simpson prosecutor, who is pretty infamous in defending the LAPD Nazi Mark Furman, to serve as the university's sole witness for the police during every single student conduct hearing. And all he does is relay his interpretation of body camera videos that students themselves are denied any access to. And I think body camera footage is notoriously hard to get a very accurate understanding of real situations. When the student conduct office has actually progressed, which is most of the time, oftentimes there's basically a lack of any investigation by the university. To read one of the following quotes, quote, UCPD officers swarmed me, lifted me into the air, and violently slammed me into the ground. I screamed in terror, scared and defenseless, due to the pressure on my lungs. I shouted, I can't breathe. Without hesitation, the officer detaining me shoved me further into the ground. Throughout my detention, I was constantly denied an explanation for my arrest, mocked, bullied, and subjected to psychological torment by UCPD officers nearby. 14 months later, the officer who arrested me showed up to my student conduct hearing only to state that I was falsely arrested. Couldn't the student conduct office have verified this before withholding my degree and repeatedly re-traumatizing me for 14 months? Um, so just the aspect of the university forcing hearings and charging students without any real evidence has had severe consequences. And I think the big thing is the withholding of student degrees, especially those who have graduated. Just to read a quote here, quote, the withholding of my degree has left me in a suspended state of trauma. I've been forced to exist in the space between finishing and freedom, trapped by a university that is clearly trying to burn me out. Do not forget, this is about silencing me, about discouraging me and others from organizing for Palestine. I missed the graduate school application cycle because my degree was never issued. I can't even download an official transcript, something I worked through years of work and persistence and a high GPA because it's marked um, with a hold, a permanent reminder of the university's cruelty masked as process. The university is taunting me. They have acknowledged that I've graduated nearly a year ago. They've said that they intend to expedite the process. And yet, I'm still here waiting to be scheduled for this hearing almost a year later, still being held in limbo by a system that wants me to disappear. Um, the student conduct process has also fueled a lot of harassment, especially cyber harassment. Troublingly, UCLA has seemingly reversed their position on doxing and harassment that they had prior to the Palestine Solidarity encampment. Instead of condemning doxing, UCLA has actively used doxed information, including the infamous website Canary Mission, as part of the student conduct process. We've obtained documented materials showing that the interim director of student conduct has actually considered it in the issuance of charging decisions. I'll also note, from our understanding, the dean of students is also directly responsible for the release of student names through the UCPD quote unquote docs list, which were used by Zionists to dox. I think it was around 100 students had their personal information released online after their names appeared upon the list at the request of UCLA Student Conduct. Um, I want to say that student conduct cases are rarely summarily dismissed, despite the student conduct code requiring dismissal of charges if there's a lack of evidence. Sometimes during the hearing, the dean or other university's witnesses will reveal a lack of evidence and their strong opinion that no conduct violation has occurred. However, despite the fact, the hearing process still continued, and like any other legal process, hearings are quite arbitrary. It's really dependent on who you get to serve as your hearing committee, and it's three officials chosen by the Office of Student Conduct. For many cases, for students, even though it's a non-academic violations, many of these hearing panels don't include any students and are solely made of staff members who I don't think are reflective of student experiences and the values of like students at the university. The hearing chair is always a university staff member, um, and they have a quite large latitude within the hearing. Oftentimes, they favor the Office of Student Conduct, naturally knowing the office. And there's always an allow of extremely prejudicial evidence within the hearing, and testimonies by, the Student Conduct Office about what happened to other students and like what other students did or nameless individuals did, despite the process really being about whether you individually did a certain action that violated the student conduct code. Um, and I want to say, like, despite the numerous due process violations, the university controlling and making their own basically kangaroo court, students most of the time have been not found not guilty, or in student conduct terms, they call not guilty insufficient evidence. And I think of our latest count, it was 24 students were found insufficient evidence of the 32 hearings that happened. I think the results are quite staggering. I think it reflects the lack of due diligence by the Office of Student Conduct. And I'll say that the people who were found to have sufficient evidence, it was largely due to them not defending themselves during the hearing, due to the city attorney's decision to hold charges over their head, which charges were not filed. But two things with the insufficient evidence verdict. Firstly, I believe that the process is the punishment. Going through the student conduct process, there's really no upsides to you as a student. You're not really clearing your name because it's all private correspondence, and it's hours and hours of unpaid labor, oftentimes where you're having to fact check the dean of students who can't bother to actually read university policy or, do any investigation themselves. Secondly, the Dean of Students, Jasmine Rush, can simply decide with no justification to overturn the results of any independent hearing. And this has happened multiple times where an independent student conduct panel has decided insufficient evidence or not guilty. And then the dean of students, for whatever reason, just says, no, you're guilty. And there's not much that you can do about it. UCLA can just find someone guilty despite like an independent finding of not guilty. And there's no requirement to have like a retrial or anything else in the hearing. So of the students that were found responsible, most have gotten suspensions. Um, and as I stated before, most of the students, they were found responsible not due to the evidence against them, but it's mainly due to their refusal to defend themselves due to the legal proceedings outside of the student conduct process that was deliberately held over their head. For people who are found responsible in the Office of Student Conduct, the independent hearing actually has no say over the sanctions. the only people who decide the sanctions are university administrators themselves. There's no oversight. And they don't really have online like sanctions guidelines. There's no chart saying like if you did this or if you found a violation of this, how much the sanctioning guidelines. And we have found that for conduct cases that are resulting from, advocacy for Palestine, it's quite harsh. Some students have been suspended for a full year or more for being illegally arrested at a protest was really the only justification behind it. I will also say that it seems to us that it contradicts the university's prior statements. I believe in a meeting with the former president and others to USAC, Monroe Gordon said that the act of being arrested itself should not result in suspension or expulsion. And based on the results, it's definitely seeming the opposite. Um, Something just to know is even prior to any hearing, the Student Conduct Office has done these interim suspension and exclusion from campus orders, which ban a student from campus without any actual independent hearing or any process whatsoever. All they have to do, all the university administration has to do is say, get Vice Chancellor Monroe Gordon to approve, and then you are banned from all UCLA property. Um, I think it's quite ridiculous that you can get banned from campus, evicted from your dorm room, stopping you from taking classes and everything else that comes with like actually paying tuition at the university without any independent oversight, evidence, or process against you. Just personally, I will say that I've been banned from campus for over 200 days, and the stated reason for me getting banned from campus was repeatedly asking questions of a university administrator. Yeah. The reason I haven't been able to be on campus for over, I think it's 8 months at this point, was asking questions of the university administrator. It's our belief that the UCLA's repressive student conduct campaign is being directed from the top. It's from the Dean of Students, Jasmine Rush, Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Monroe Gordon, Chancellor Frank, the UC Regents. Whenever you ask them about decisions, all of them try to feign responsibility and try to add this air of impartiality. Many times they invent rules on why they should be excluded from answering questions on due process violations, despite overseeing the process. And I think whenever you engage with Monroe Gordon or Jasmine Rush or whoever about the student conduct process, I would urge you not to allow them to feign impartiality surrounding the process. Um, I just want to I want to say a little bit about international students and the Trump administration. So there's special risks for international students throughout the student conduct process. International students face a loss of their visa and deportation if they are sanctioned by the Office of Student Conduct. And there is no special considerations for international students. Some universities have policies that state that international student sanctions for non-academic cases will be lowered to prevent deportation and the loss of visas. In addition, we've seen various data around the student conduct process appearing in Republican House committee reports. And they've appeared where they cited internal records about the student conduct. I think it's pretty likely to believe that UCLA has turned over ample information surrounding the student conduct process to the Trump administration. It's also really important to note in the Trump administration's extortion attempt, there was many demands surrounding the student conduct process and restrictions on campus speech. If you look at those restrictions in UCLA responses, I think there's essentially no disagreement between the Trump administration and the UCLA administration, and their responses was, we already have implemented those policies that you want us to implement as part of your extortion request. So before ending, I want to go over two last things. So firstly is the group student conduct process. We've talked only about the individual student conduct process because I think it's more relevant to most students on campus, but there is a separate group student conduct process. And it's kind of ironic, but student groups have more rights within the student conduct code than actual students do as individuals. And the hearing committees for group student conduct hearings are composed only of students. Because of FERPA restrictions, we haven't been able to obtain data on student outcomes in the student conduct process, but we did get all of the group conduct records since 2020, which I have on the slide is just a summary and like the sanctions that were recommended. Just to say two things. There is a lack of many cases that were heavily publicized in campus news. Like the Daily Bruin has publicized very prominent things that seem like they would be likely to indicate student conduct procedures, such as various orgs doing blackface or hosting, very parties that are very against the conduct code. And I think we haven't seen charges for those cases appearing in the records. I think also in the case of SJP, I think there's extensive documentation to believe that decisions surrounding the case and the outcomes and like basically decision making around the case, they were coordinated and sought their advice from the PR outlet SKDK, which is a registered agent of Israel. And then last thing, before just going to an end, is a little bit on the interim student conduct code. So 2 weeks ago, they sent an email. They actually implemented the interim code around 2 or 3 months ago. And from our understanding, there's been no prior consultation with students, faculty, or staff that's required in the amendment process to get to these new codes. And despite in the emails where Monroe Gordon and Jasmine Rush were announcing it, they advertised it as strengthening due process and updates to encompass AI and the new reality of academics. We believe that the updates are actually intended as a clawback on our important rights that we've earned as students. Most importantly is the right to an independent hearing regardless of your case. We have some of the other ones, but the removal of the ability to cross-examine witnesses, discretionary timelines for the university, and the changed jurisdiction. The QR code here has a redline version of the student conduct code, which importantly has been eliminated from all university websites. They don't have a redline versions. But if you were to look through it, the actual substantial differences are quite dramatic. And if you're looking and reading through in the eyes of what's been happening with the student conduct process, it's quite, I think it's primarily aimed at easing the ability of university administration to infringe on students' rights to free expression and especially to crack down on protests related to Palestine and to appease the Trump administration. I just want to end by saying the cost. I think there's a significant cost to university. Not only the cost of running the entire student conduct process, which we believe around 1.14 million and increasing because they keep hiring new people to undergo the student conduct process, but it's also a cost on students. I think there's a real physical and mental toll on students undergoing the process. There's a chilling effect on people's speech on campus when people are being suspended for, speech-related issues. And I think there's also a sense of, as USAC, as the elected representative of undergraduate students and GSA as well, we're losing the ability to control our own, like what is acceptable. There's like a loss of student voice, and we're increasingly seeing consolidation of university processes of power and of university decision making, solely in the heads of the university administration. I think in a lot of the student conduct process, faculty has also been eliminated from, any sort of input or decision making. Um, I think going forward, I think our hope is to work together to try to create a more equitable student conduct process. I believe faculty in the Academic Senate have been raising a lot of concerns around this interim policy, and I would urge you to raise similar concerns and really advocate for increasing student rights, in enshrining, essentially a Bill of Rights for students on campus and to really create a university where people are actually respected and lives up to the values that are described within university like mission statements and so on. But I think that's it in terms of the presentation. As I said, I left the link to the presentation if you want to review it afterwards, and I'm happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Thank you, Dylan. I guess for the sake of time, I'll allow for 2 questions. If anybody has any, please raise your hands. All right. Well, there's none on our end, but thank you so much, Dylan, for your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we will now move on to our officer reports. I ask only execs, and I will keep mine written. Tommy?
Yeah, I'll keep written for today.
EVP? Does EVP have any updates?
ACAC 18 was introduced in the Assembly by Assemblymember Caloza, and this constitutional amendment would increase the current student representative on the regents from 1 to 2. Just got back from a successful student lobby conference in Sacramento, and students got to lobby on budget priorities such as the $5 million allocation for career readiness programs and data systems for underrepresented students. And other budget asks include $20 million for basic needs, including housing, CalFresh, and disability service providers. And some bills include opportunity for all and an increase in mental health leave of absences, amongst others. And everything else is written on Sherry's officer report.
Chris?
Written for tonight. Thank you.
Orlando?
Um, Hello, everyone. Happy 10th week. Just a reminder that starting week 1, spring quarter, SOL will open up new registration for new groups. If you know anyone or if you're thinking of starting one, spring quarter is a good time, especially if you want to get the ball rolling. Fall quarter, you're already registered. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. But that's all I have.
Lorelai isn't here. Jonathan?
Hey, hi, hello. A couple of things from me. Lorelai's not here today, as you can tell. She'll be back tomorrow if you need her. We are here for spring break. So if you plan to be doing any work or you want to stop by, et cetera, we will be here all week with finals and all of that. A reminder that your agenda items for your week 1 meeting are due this coming Friday. So that agenda will come out on this coming Friday and believe for week 1. As you can see, we have the constitutional amendments on the agenda tonight, but did want to give you all, and particularly CRC, a heads up that the bylaw amendments from that parliamentarian and SGS review are coming very soon. And they're a bit of a doozy, if I'm honest. So we'll be reaching out with that soon. And I do want to encourage you all to encourage other people to run for office. Your deadline is this Friday. It is not too late to start a petition. And I really want to stress the importance of having a full council at the very start. Um, Not only does it cost you money to have a special election in fall, um, that you could spend on other things, but they don't get then the retreat and the training and onboarding, and then they miss out on all of summer, all of the appointments, everything that you do. So I highly encourage you all to encourage others to throw their hat in the ring. It is still not too late. Um, Speaking of transitions and your term, I sent over an email today with some of the relevant transition dates for you all so that you have them far enough in advance that you can plan. I'll quickly go over them. Transition docs will be due at the end of April, the 24th. We'll send out a submission link for that soon. Um, uh, Social media accounts must be transitioned over to the new elected officer by the 22nd of May. Your last day in office and your last day of office access is May 25th. You will lose access on the 26th, and your last day of programming is that 25th. And then your email accounts must be transferred over to the new folks by the 30th of May. If you have any questions or concerns about that, let us know. I want to congratulate Joy for being the #1 Joy to finish the LA Marathon on Sunday.
Oh, thank you.
Huge accomplishment. And I think that's all I got. Have a wonderful week 10.
All right, next we will move on to our 2026-2028 OSAC allocations. I don't know who that's with.
It's going to be so attached are the 2026, 2028 OSAC allocations that we decided on as a committee. Yeah.
Oh, are there any questions or comments from council members regarding the allocations? Edison?
Hello. Yeah, so yeah, I am part of OSAC as well. Yeah, we did spend a lot of time looking through the allocations. I think I'd just like to share that I will be voting against the allocations recommended by OSAC. And this is primarily because during the review process, there was a decision to exclude applications from USAC-sponsored organizations during the review process. And while I understand that the intention of the decision was to promote fairness and equity in office space allocations, I would like to mention that the guidelines that had been previously approved at council and released to the students for this particular cycle had stated that USAC-sponsored organizations would actually receive priority. As a result, I find the decision unfortunate as it departed from the published guidelines, and it was only made after the application deadline had lapsed. And I think out of the affected applicants, there were 2 that currently occupy office spaces and rely on it quite extensively. So they are currently looking for alternatives, and they are greatly inconvenienced by this as well. And then both of these groups, I reached out to them. They have shared with me their frustration and disappointment because they feel that there's been a lack of transparency and accountability in the process, given that the guidelines that have been published to students were not adhered to. And so for these reasons, I will be voting against the allocations. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for bringing that up, Edison. This will be the only time I'm speaking on this again, but the committee consists of myself, Diego, Edison, Brett, and Kea. All of the decisions we make were as a committee. The reason why we didn't consider USAC-sponsored organizations is because they already automatically get an office space provided by their commission or their USAC office. And so they're on the same playing field as everybody, all the other student organizations who do not have a guaranteed office space. Second, the USAC bylaws imply that the commission that is sponsoring the organization is responsible for providing office space. So the bylaws, in this case of a discrepancy like this, where the bylaws and the guidelines contradict each other, the bylaws take precedence. And third, we voted on this as a committee with a 3-0-1 vote, not to consider USAC-sponsored organizations. And yes, I understand this is not an ideal situation for the applicants, especially regarding like not screening out this discrepancy. But I wanted to also highlight that Edison, you are also part of this committee too, and that as a committee, we take decisions, we take responsibility as a committee instead of as individuals. So that is the last thing I'll say on this.
Edison.
Yeah, if I may just add on really briefly, I think the reason why I'm mentioning this is because when I spoke to the organizations that were affected, they were not very happy about it. And so I just wanted to bring or share this with the rest of council in case anything happens in the future or if this gets brought up again. Yes, I was part of the committee. I did mention my disagreement. I do agree that it is definitely a move towards fairness to ensure that spaces are prioritized more for non-USAC affiliated groups. But I think my main issue with what had happened is the fact that guidelines had been released and then they were basically unilaterally changed during our meetings. And aside from me reaching out to the affected organizations after the fact, there was no move to sort of like, I guess, communicate the changes to the affected groups. And so I think naturally it created a lot of frustration and annoyance on the parts of the student leaders who had already gone through the process of collating the materials, writing the application that is actually quite long. And so after engaging with them, I thought that I needed to represent their views and share their experiences by voting no against this. My initial, I guess, preferred way of resolving this would have been to honor the way that the guidelines had been released and follow the wording, and to keep this in note so that future OSAC cycles, the committee that forms again in 2028, they can be the ones to update the guidelines and then allocate it in a manner where the guidelines had already been updated and shared with the rest of the students. But I just wanted to sort of just raise the issue and share it here with everyone. I'm not calling upon anyone to vote against the allocations because I think a lot of work has already been put into it. I just wanted to bring the issue up to the rest of council. Yeah.
Brett.
Hi, everyone. So I feel like some more context because I'm also on OSAC. We did vote 3-1-0. So this was not like a decision made by one person. It was like made by multiple of us, given the fact that we came across some bylaws that we believe should not, include USAC sponsored orgs. And so we feel like the bylaws trump like the guidelines. And obviously, like we made the mistake of not including it in the guidelines, but I think we agreed moving forward that that's something we're going to screen out. So this issue isn't something that comes up later, but just wanted to emphasize like we're prioritizing our bylaws. We voted on it from a majority of the committee.
Okay.
To echo what Joy and Brett have said, we did vote on this as a committee, and the bylaws do take precedent. Catching the guidelines was something that all of us were equally responsible for, and there is a discrepancy, but we should have all caught that. And then, okay. And then another thing is that this wasn't about being unfair to any certain office. If you know, like all of us know, like TSR and ISR, we also share one office, and we're both really, really fast growing offices. SWC has one office for 18 committees. And CEC does have 5 offices. So it's more about like the lack of space than being unfair towards any one office. And I think we're right now, according to the space that we have, it's like the best situation that we could have made sure that we're being fair to all the clubs equally.
Chris.
From the majority of the board? Was it communicated after this decision was decided? Was it communicated to the public in some way, shape, or form? Was there action taken in terms of communicating that to the public?
These meetings are public
Yeah.
and they're recorded, and yeah, there are minutes for these meetings as well. Yeah, if anybody like communicated directly to their orgs, they can share.
Edison?
Yeah, so I can speak for the experiences of the orgs that I was talking to. So that I was talking to 4 organizations in total. I don't think there was like an update on our Instagram or website, but for me, I reached out via email to let them know of the changes, and I did mention that OSAC voted on it as a whole, and I explained the entire situation to them. But that only took place, I guess, like last week, and the decision made by OSAC happened, I believe, the issue was first brought up like week 5 or week 6, and then we voted on it in like week 7 or week 8. Yeah.
Nico?
Hey, can I just ask what the bylaws are that are being referenced, just so we have transparency on that?
Article 3, Section D.
Would you be able to read that out loud, please?
The commission recommending sponsorship of a commission-related group shall be responsible for providing office space and logistical support for such groups as available as needed.
Chris?
My question is, have these groups that have expressed some type of disagreement with this new policy, have they historically had space?
2 out of 5, or 2 out of 6 had space prior. For context, 46 total applications were received. 47 total applications were received. 6 were from USAC organizations, and then only 2 of them, which were both under CSC, had prior space.
Chris?
The reason why I pose this question is because this conversation is sort of making me have flashbacks to the conversations that Diego and other representatives on this council and myself were having with respect to the appointments at the beginning of the year, and administration wanted to take over some appointments. I think we were encouraging administration to be more aligned with historical practice, as opposed to what they think should be written. The only reason why I say this is because if we've had something be in place for a long time, and that's been historical practice for some of these organizations, I find it somewhat interesting to just come in and sort of change a policy. And I know that, there's been, it's been mentioned that this is in accordance with the bylaws, but nobody on that committee, and there's 3 or 4, identified that issue until now. And that's more on y'all, to be honest, and not on the public. And so I think it's our responsibility as leaders to try and figure out a solution to it. Given that there's been historical practice, because it's kind of like, wow, we've pulled up these bylaws, and you've historically had access to this space, but you're not going to have access anymore. And I'm not necessarily saying there's a right or a wrong. I'm just saying if there could be, like, maybe with respect to the future, some action that can be taken or developed to just ensure that, like, the impacts that we have given the bylaws, because the bylaws should take precedence. I wholeheartedly agree. To make sure that, like, the impact that people have is minimal.
I'm going to only have 2 more speakers, Talia and then Tommy, but I also want to comment that no email notifications for allocations have been sent, just because the allocations had not been yet made, and reaching out without council approval would have been premature. With that, I'll call on Talia.
I definitely want to echo what Chris said. Obviously, the allocations have already been made, so it's kind of hard to go back. And I don't think that that's like what Edison is asking for us to do, but I do agree. I think like we always complain to administration for making decisions and not being transparent with us. And I think as elected officers, it's our job to make things easier for students rather than harder. I think the next time these allocations come around, if the bylaws are to take precedent, I guess like that's fine, like that's what's set in place. But there also has to be some sort of extra effort to maybe transition those orgs that are used to whatever the historic practice is out of their office spaces and help them figure out what they're going to do, because right now we're just going to leave two organizations kind of in the dust, I guess. And without them knowing that that was what was going to happen, or what they probably like they didn't expect that to happen. So I guess even if these get approved, um, maybe the committee should brainstorm how to help transition those two organizations out of their offices.
Tommy?
Yeah, if I'm gonna be just a bit like honest, like every year or every time we have an OSAC cycle, there are orgs that do not get an office. And that's kind of just the fact of the matter. I do think that generally speaking, there's a lot of areas which our bylaws are in conflict with other things, hence why we have our consultant coming in this year. With regards to the allocations of this year, it went through a democratic process. It was a public meeting. A vote was had. I do not think that this is a change of practice in any way. I think, like I said, every year there are orgs that do not get an office space just by nature of limited space being had. With regards to what you said, Talia, I do agree that in next year something should be done to address the issue, and I think that should be making sure that the bylaws are not in conflict in any way with the individual committee policies, including OSAC. But with regards to this vote, unfortunately, I think that's just how it goes. I am not in favor of giving USAC committees or orgs special treatment. With regards to space, I think there's very limited space on this campus, and I'm sure we're all aware of that. So for us to give our own orgs special treatment when we're the ones controlling the decision-making process, it just does not seem equitable. And I think we're typically a council who likes to push forward changes where equity can be increased. So in this case, I am not in favor of maintaining historical precedent. So I support the decision of the OSAC committee, and I do think that they have followed the processes accordingly. They're in line with the bylaws, and they have gone through the democratic process. So,
I'm gonna have to call for a vote. Can someone please motion for a vote? I'm sorry,
I
Chris
can
or
motion.
Chris? Oh, Tommy?
I motion to approve the OSAC guidelines.
It's the OSAC allocations.
OSAC allocations, my bad.
Second.
Second.
Tommy motions, Brett seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. All against, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. All abstaining. With a vote of 9-1, the 2026-2028 OSAC allocations are approved. Next, we will move on to the Robert S. Michaels Leadership in Service Award 2025-26 application.
Hello. Yeah, so this application, this award, sorry, is just something that CSE administers every year. We open it up in the first week of spring quarter. Students can apply, and then we will select 10 students to be awarded this scholarship. And then what happens is that in the following year, they get $1,000 disbursed to them via financial aid across 3 quarters. There's also a supplemental award of $250 that the awardee can choose to go to any organizations of their choice. And then this award, or this $250 is funded through CSE's budget. And then the $1,000 comes from the Vice Chancellor's office, I think. Yeah. Happy to entertain any questions about this application or this award.
Are there any questions? Who makes up the committee of this award? Sorry, I know it's probably on the app.
Yeah, so this committee, the selection committee will be formed by 9 individuals. It consists of 2 students nominated by CSC, 2 from Diego's office, the president. Another 2 will be from past year's awardees. And then another 2 will be from a staff affiliated with ASUCLA. And then the last one has to be an ASUCLA director. So the committee has not been formed yet, but after the applications has been approved, I'll be reaching out to gather the committee.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Excited. Can we please motion to approve the service award application?
Yeah. I motion to approve the Robert S. Michaels Leadership and Service Award 2025-2026 application.
Second that motion.
Edison motions, Brett seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. All against. All abstaining. With a vote of 11 to 0, the Robert S. Michaels Leadership and Service Award for the 2025-26 application is approved. Next, we have constitutional amendment changes, which I will pass over to Jonathan.
Hi, folks. I can give you all a brief overview of these changes, similar to how I did in CRC last week. So the first change is to Article 2, Section B, and it adds 2 sections, and one that states the council shall have general supervision of the affairs of the association, and another that says the council may establish such boards, commissions, committees, or task force it deems necessary to coordinate the activities of the association. This was recommended from our parliamentarian to solidify what powers essentially that you already utilize. So as you know, you have standing committees, you have other non-elected bodies that function but aren't necessarily defined in your constitution. So this is just giving you the power that you technically already wield to have that general supervision and create those kinds of things. The next is in Article 2, Section D, and that is in relation to your summer quorum. It's just adding that the quorum has to be no less than a majority of your elected officers, which is in line with your current practice and what we advise you with anyway. You tend to go down to 8 for summer quorum, which is majority plus or half plus 1. The next, also in that same article and section, is striking a section that says abstentions by any appointed member of council shall not be counted toward any constitutionally required 2/3 or 3/4 vote. We're striking this because there are no appointed members of council that vote. All of your appointed members may vote on other committees, but none of you as council member, no appointed members vote on council itself. So it's just not necessary to be in there. Article 2, Section E, this one strikes the line that says the council shall approve the seating of its own members. This was recommended by our parliamentarian just because she thought it was confusing, candidly. But also this brings your constitution out of contradiction with itself. So in 2021, a constitutional amendment was approved that states that the elections board shall certify the results of the elections, but it failed to strike this line that said you seat your own members. So this change is just putting it in line with what the voters approved in 2021. The next in that section rewords the Robert's Rules section of your bylaws. So it now would state the rules contained in the current edition of Robert's Rules of Order newly revised shall govern the USA in all cases to which they are applicable and in which they are not inconsistent with this Constitution, the USA bylaws, and any special rules of order the USA may adopt. This one was done basically because as it read, it said that Robert's Rules govern the procedures of council, but not of all of your other bodies and of your association at large. So this is just clarifying that and putting that in line with parliamentary best practice. The next one is in Article 4, Section B. This is in relation to the ex officio members of council. As your constitution currently states, it says that the ASUCLA executive director will serve as your ex officio member of council. In practice, as you all know, Poria is not here on Tuesday nights. That tends to be me. So this just adds to say that the executive director can select a representative to serve in their place as that ex officio member at their discretion. So just putting us in line with essentially what we already do. The next is in Article 5, and this is under the president's powers and description, and this is striking the line that says the president shall be a member of the ASUCLA Board of Directors and Communications Board. In practice, you all know that you appoint to those two bodies, but the constitutions of both of those bodies prohibit actually elected council members from serving directly on those boards. So no president has served on either of those boards since, at least since I was a student, I believe much further back. And it's just a piece of your constitution that needs to be taken out so it is in line with the larger association governing bodies. Next is in Article 8, Section A. This just strikes this is about the Communications Board. It reads the ASUCLA Communications Board shall be responsible for ASUCLA publications and the radio station as delineated in, and here we struck in the USA bylaws and in the Communications Board Constitution. Excuse me. There is a very short section in your bylaws about the Communications Board that essentially just says the Communications Board has its own constitution and operates independently, which is one of our recommended strikes for when the bylaws come around as well. But we're striking this because there's really no need for you to have anything about the Communications Board in your bylaws because the only real relationship you have with them is to appoint to their board. They have their own constitution and their own governing documents that oversee them. And then the last one is striking this note, essentially, that says the Constitution was corrected by the Undergraduate Students Association Council and an action taken on the April 25th, 2006 council meeting. At that meeting, council approved by unanimous vote by 12-0-0. The Constitution would be retyped to restore to its rightful place the information regarding the vote required to amend the bylaws, which had been mistakenly omitted from the Constitution when it was retyped in 1984 to reflect changes that had been made to the Constitution in 1982. It just doesn't need to be in there. Like it's not. We don't need to know when this was last retyped, and their constitution does show when it was last officially amended by the voters, which is not this. And honestly, it's just also confusingly written. So that's our last recommended strike. Yeah, happy to answer any questions, and that's it.
Any questions for Jonathan or for myself, who will serve as a representative on the USAC 2026 elections ballot for this constitutional amendment? If not, can we please get a motion to approve? Oh, can we please get CRC recommendations?
CRC recommends the passage of these amendments with the 3-0 vote.
Thank you. All right, can we please get a motion? Oh, yes, can we please get a motion to approve for it to be on the ballot?
Motion to approve the constitutional changes to be on the ballot.
I second.
Your motions, KS seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. All against? All abstaining? With a vote of 12-0, the constitutional amendment changes for the 2026 academic year, or 2026, are approved for the USAC elections 2026 year for the ballots. Next, we have a resolution calling on the UC Regents in regards to their divestment. Hira?
Hello. Similarly to the letter we passed to Ted Liu, earlier this quarter. I'm forgetting the week. We passed that with PUSO, the Philippine U.S. Solidarity Organization, West LA, and we're doing something similar but dedicated to the UC Regents, calling for more financial transparency and just calling on them to address the, their complicity, oh my God, I pronounced that wrong, in human rights violations and militarization in the Philippines. I think the document honestly speaks for itself. I'm gonna save you guys some time, but we have a lot of support on this resolution. A lot of people want to see it passed and again call for that accountability at the regental level. I'm happy to answer any questions if you guys have any.
Are there any questions for you? If not, can we please get a motion?
Motion to approve the resolution calling on the University of California Regents to divest from companies complicit in human rights violations and militarization in the Philippines.
Is there a second? Oh, okay. Hear motions, Kaya seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. All against. All abstaining. With a vote of 11 to 0 to 0, that resolution passes. Next, we have a letter from Joy.
I'm going to have faculty directors Winston and Isabella present this. They're on the Zoom.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Wait, could I share my screen or I don't know if I have the ability. Okay, cool. We're going to present a letter in support of LADOT's Westwood Boulevard Safety Mobility Project. I'm going to share my screen just to show what the project will look like. This is our public comment guide, which will be out soon, but this is what the scope of the project will be. In my opinion, I think this will probably be the most significant mobility project other than the D-line opening that will affect UCLA in the next few years. So the project will start at Westwood Boulevard and LeConte Avenue. It will have a fully dedicated bus lane from LeConte all the way to Santa Monica Boulevard. It will also have fully protected bike lanes from LeConte Avenue all the way to the Westwood E-Line station. And there will be improvements at specific intersections, including at Westwood and Wilshire. Once the D-Line opens, there'll be improvements at Westwood and Ohio, which we presented the letter on last week, as well as Westwood and Santa Monica, Westwood and Mississippi, as well as Westwood and Tennessee. And so all of these will make the road a lot safer. This has been a really good proposal that we've learned. And so we're hoping that LADOT and the council member stick to this proposal instead of watering it down. Okay, I'm going to start reading the letter. Okay, on behalf of the Undergraduate Students Association Council at the University of California, Los Angeles, we implore LADOT and the council member to proceed with the full design of the Westwood Boulevard Safety and Mobility Project as proposed at LADOT's Westwood Open House on March 5th, 2026. Specifically, we call for fully protected bike lanes on Westwood Boulevard from LeConte Avenue to Exposition Boulevard and dedicated bus lanes from LeConte Avenue to Santa Monica Boulevard. We also call for the project to be built fully in one phase before 2027 and 2028. The accident at the 99 Ranch was tragic but unsurprising. What was most frustrating was that it could have been prevented. It is evidence of a pattern of neglect on our roads that has consistently put pedestrians, cyclists, and students at unnecessary risk. Many students avoid walking or biking along Westwood Boulevard because of safety and accessibility concerns, often forcing them onto arduous detours.
11 years ago, protected bike lanes were proposed but ultimately rejected on Westwood Boulevard. Concrete protected bike lanes, curb extensions, and other traffic calming infrastructure could have provided physical barriers that would stop cars in cases such as this before they crash into buildings and people. In the 10 years since protected bike lanes were rejected, Westwood Boulevard has seen 354 collisions, 106 of them involving pedestrians or cyclists. This corridor is on Los Angeles' high injury network and sees the top 5% of crashes on streets throughout LA. A few months ago, Burns for Better Transit recorded a race down Westwood Boulevard, where they noted the inconsistency in bike lanes and dangerous interactions with cars at these timestamps.
Safety and mobility improvements on Westwood Boulevard should be expanded beyond the measure HLA minimum. 2 years ago, the project area voted for HLA by over 66%, demonstrating renewed support for safer streets. But while the safety improvements under HLA would be an improvement, the mobility plan lists limited non-specific changes to the corridor. It is important to note that if only the minimum standards mandated by HLA were implemented, the accident at the 99 Ranch would likely still have occurred. The community engagement process can be both a blessing and a curse. We appreciate the opportunity to comment on these critically important issues and make our voices heard. Yet we also recognize that community input can be used as an excuse to distract, delay, and dismantle safety improvements if they cause even the smallest amount of discomfort. Short-termism is what brought us to this point. The injuries and lives lost along this corridor should be the most damning community feedback of all.
So let's be honest about some hard truths. We should absolutely pursue solutions that balance safety, mobility, and access. But how many more people must be injured or die before we acknowledge that saving lives is worth slowing down cars? Speed limits, traffic signals, and pedestrian crossings exist because we know that unregulated vehicle movement puts people at risk. Those measures were similarly contested, yet now we recognize them as essential. Thinking that we can significantly improve safety without asking anything of drivers reflects the same incremental, non-committal approach that brought us here. Even then, estimates of slowdowns along this corridor are minor, over a minute per mile during rush hour. We call on the council member and LADOT to reject such a mindset and instead make Westwood Boulevard a model for how Los Angeles can make its streets safer and more connected.
Protected bike lanes and dedicated bus lanes will improve safety for all road users, strengthen public transit, speed up emergency response, and advance the equity and environmental goals we know we must meet sooner rather than later. We support the major components of the proposal, including protected bike lanes from LeConte Avenue to the Westwood Rancho Park Metro E-Line station, dedicated bus lanes from LeConte Avenue to Santa Monica Boulevard, since according to Caltrans, average bus speeds on Westwood Boulevard only range between 5 to 10 miles per hour, which is well below the desirable standard. And according to Big Blue Bus, dedicated bus lanes would speed up service on Westwood Boulevard by between 14 and 20%, as well as intersection improvements at Westwood Wilshire, Westwood Ohio, Westwood Mississippi, and Westwood Tennessee, including improved pedestrian visibility and signal improvements.
We urge the following considerations also. Bike lanes should be fully protected with solid concrete barriers, not plastic bollards. Visibility is not sufficient. These lanes must physically protect bikers from vehicles. Bus lanes should be fully enforced at all hours with automated camera enforcement. Bus lanes that fail to be enforced will be ineffective. This should start from day one. We support improvements at Westwood and Santa Monica to strengthen this major connecting point, and at Westwood and Pico to better serve the future UCLA Research Park. We urge collaboration with Metro Bike Share as they explore new station locations, including potential stations along Westwood Boulevard.
We represent over 33,000 UCLA undergraduates, many of whom use various forms of public and active transportation to get to class, work, home, or anywhere else in LA. We call on LADOT and the City of Los Angeles to adopt the proposed design of the Westwood Boulevard Safety and Mobility Project to improve safety and accessibility along this corridor. LADOT should accelerate this project by implementing quick build measures now and completing the whole project in one phase. We urge the council member to fully fund and support this project. Okay, that's it. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Thank you so much. Yeah. And questions, comments? No. Just want to say thank you for the letter, and it was a tragic accident, what happened last month. But yeah. Are there any, can we please get a motion?
I move to approve the letter regarding Westwood Boulevard Safety and Mobility Project.
I second.
Joy motions. Tommy seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. All against, all abstaining. With the vote of 12 to 0, the letter is approved. Next, we have changes to ARC guidelines. Divine.
Hi, everyone. So the changes to the art guidelines, it was just like to make it clearer for everyone about the funding process. So where it says funding walkthrough, it now says fill out the Google form application before the deadline for the cycle you are applying to. Before it used to say fill out the application and then also email it to our ARC email, and then we'll send an email notifying the applicant that we received it. That's just not we're just not doing that anymore. It's just they'll fill it out. They'll fill out the application and then everything else has remained the same about we'll send an email to give you time for a mandatory hearing. And yeah, any questions about that?
Any questions, comments? If not, can we please get a motion?
A motion to approve the changes to the ARC guidelines.
I second.
Divine motions, Tommy seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. All against, all abstaining. With a vote of 11 to 0, those guidelines are approved. With that, we conclude our USAC meeting and I adjourn our meeting at 8:34 p.m. Thank you.